Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for hitting play on the Fertility Confidence podcast. Today, I am pulling some of your questions. They're specifically actually off my Instagram, but I'm assuming they're podcast listeners. Your listener questions. There were so many. I picked 5. I feel like that was probably the most we were going to be able to get through in one recording. So we will definitely do this again if this is something you guys are interested in. So I'm going to answer some stuff about IVF, some stuff about male fertility, some stuff about reproductive immunology. We've got like the whole gamut of topics to chat about today on this episode. Before we get into it, my voice is a little scratchy today. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, if you don't already, come find me at Fertility Confidence Method. We just got back from Europe. We've been home for a week now, actually, and I'm still adjusting. I still feel like I'm adjusting a little bit, but we're happy to be home. We had a great family trip. It was the first time we actually took the kids to Europe, which, was a lot, but also I think, was good. Now, now that I'm home and we can kind of just like relax a little bit, I'm like, maybe it wasn't as terrible as in the moment sometimes. There was hard moments, and there was also like fantastic, amazing core memory moments, which I think is just true of any vacation, really, or not. We don't call them vacations in our house. They're relocations. We don't come back rested and rejuvenated, that's for sure. Not when we all go away together. Before we get into the questions too, a really quick thank you to our amazing podcast sponsor, Needed. You can check them out over at thisisneeded.com, and the code Dr. Kelsey gets you 20% off your first order. Needed is one of our favorite supplement companies for prenatals specifically, and we are really loving their NENS. Oh my gosh, their Needed Men's Multi right now. I don't love combination products, guys. You know that if you've been listening to me for any length of time. And the multi is not necessarily considered a combination product, but in my opinion, it's a multivitamin, right? But the makeup of what they've done with the therapeutic level of nutrients in the men's multi specifically is so great from a sperm health perspective. It has all of those top-rated antioxidants that we want to see for morphology, DNA fragmentation, count, and you don't get that in a normal multivitamin. You just don't. So highly recommend checking that out. Like I said, thisisneeded.com. Thank you so much, Needed, for your generous 20% discount for our FCM listeners. All right, let's get into it. The first question is actually around male factor fertility. So the question was, motility is low at 32%, but concentration is good at 66 million per milliliter. What do we do about this? So concentration is definitely good. I'd love, obviously, with any of these questions, I'm always like, I'd love more information, right? And that's just the beauty of having personalized care, is we are going to dig in and get all the nitty-gritty details that we need. We clearly can't do that in this forum. I'd love to know what the other numbers are looking like, but from an optimal level standpoint, a 32% motility is okay, but could be better. We also don't have information in this. Is this, 32 all-encompassing motility, or is this forward progressive motility? Because some semen analysis labs actually break that down for you, which is really good to see, because we do want the forward progressive motility. We want our sperm to swim fast and straight. If you've ever seen a video of a petri dish of sperm, you will know that it's actually insanely impressive that anyone gets pregnant, because sperm just swim like this. Like they go around and around in circles, like they have no idea what's going on, chasing themselves. It looks like pure pandemonium. It's not like this perfectly lined up like battlefield of marchers going in their like arrangement or whatever it's called. I'm reading a book right now that's got like some war like battle stuff. What do they call it? Formation? Yeah, formation. They don't have that, which, in theory, you'd think like, let's be smart about this. They're very inefficient, you guys. And I don't mean, for the men listening, like I don't mean that in a bad way. They are, which is why we need so many of them. Like ideally 60 million per milliliter of volume. That is a lot of sperm. It's because they swim like shit, guys. They just do. So 32%, I don't have my chart up in front of me, that's probably sitting around the like 15th percentile, meaning 85% of men have better swimming sperm than that. That's assuming this is forward progressive motility. We ideally want that to be around 60%. So it's not terrible. 32%, I mean, it's half of what we want, but it's not nothing. And there's lots and lots we can do from a motility perspective. This is where things like CoQ10 actually have really great research. There's new research coming out. Creatine is like all the rage right now in the fitness industry and the influencer industry. And there is research with creatine and motility. It's small, like do we think it's the best thing out there? Probably not, but it's not doing harm, which is cool. There's lots we can do for motility specifically, but what the biggest thing you want to remember is that when it comes to motility, we want to be focusing on mitochondrial health because it's the mitochondria that are actually making the energy for the sperm to swim. The other thing to look at when your motility is on the lower side is what is your morphology and what's the breakdown of that? If morphology is also low and a big issue with them is that there's a lot of tail defects, then we know why they're not swimming, right? It's actually more of a physical issue than like an energy production issue. So some other things to think about if you're digging into those types of numbers. We do have lots of other male podcast episodes out, so you can scroll through. I think there's one specifically on motility. I will put it in the show notes if it's there. I don't have the number off the top of my head. Okay, that was a good first question. Second question is, what is reproductive immunology and how do you know if you need it? And I love this question because this is something we're actually been talking a lot about inside our community, Fertility Confidence Method. I just made a plan yesterday for a new patient, and she and her partner, her husband, have been trying on and off for 4 years. And it was one of those situations that you, as a practitioner and as a woman going through infertility, especially when you get you actually advocate, you get all the blood work, you have a decent amount of blood work done. You're not just getting that like surface scratch look at things. And if you're like, what the heck are you talking about, Kelsey? What is a deeper dive look? Check out Labs 101, ttc.kelseyduncan.com/fertility-labs. It's our full lab assessment resource that doesn't just walk you through what to advocate for, but what they mean, how to read them, and what the optimal levels are, because reference ranges just aren't it when it comes to fertility. And this patient had great labs. I was like, everything here actually looks really, really good, really optimal, which is always like, you just want to find something. Fertility is like the one time in your life where you want your labs to come back with flags, right? We all talk about it in office hours and FCM whenever I'm like, yeah, this looks good. And everyone's like, oh, and I'm like, I know we want to be sick. We want something wrong. We want to be able to fix it. And it really sucks when everything comes back good. And it doesn't happen often, but she was someone new in our community that I was like, yeah, wow, things here look good. They do have male factor. So like that's a whole other side of the thing. But I mentioned in her plan, like these are the two areas we now want to look into based on the fact that like we've checked the boxes with hormones, your thyroid, all of those things. There's a few other labs we wanted to do, like insulin, her thyroid antibodies, those like basic labs that just weren't included. But for the most part, things looked pretty good. So we might still find something from like just a lab perspective. And one of those things was we should actually walk down the lane of immunology. They're considering IVF in the fall, which at their timeline now truly does make sense. And immunology would be something that likely wouldn't be brought up in the fertility clinic space with her until she's had failed IVF cycles. And then they say, why isn't this working? And then they would go back and be like, let's maybe look at the immunology piece. Our perspective and how we help our clients is to advocate for this information prior to spending the $20,000, $30,000 on IVF. Because if there is an immunology problem, let's say you have elevated natural killer cells, you have an overactive immune system, meaning when there is a fertilized embryo, an embryo has been created and it's trying to implant, but your immune cells will not allow that to happen. IVF isn't going to change that. Your immune system is still going to be a problem. So we help to advocate for looking at that stuff as soon as you want, essentially. We reserve the deep dive immunology look for are women who have been at this for probably 2+ years with no pregnancies and unexplained infertility, everything looks good. Then we're definitely like, let's bark down this tree. It's not a necessarily cheap endeavor to get a good full look at your immune health, but it's worth it if you're considering IVF, especially, or if you've had recurrent miscarriage that is not explained by anything else, or you have a known autoimmune condition. Those are the 3 clients that were like, this is something we want to do with you right off the bat, because why wait until you've spent 20, 30, 40, 50K on IVF to find out that you needed immune support in your transfer plan? And not only about, let's take the money off the table. Like, that's a lot of money, right? But I think a lot of us can say, like, if it brings us a baby, it's worth it, However, think about the heartbreak that you're going through in that case of you've made embryos and you're transferring them and it's not working. And we can negate some of that with doing a deeper dive look if you fall into those buckets of immunology. Now, I'll put the asterisk there of like, let's say you're not someone with unexplained, like true unexplained, everything's been checked, everything looks good, you aren't having recurrent loss, or you don't have a known autoimmune condition. If you're like, I just want to make sure that I have all the information I need before going through this process any further, you are entitled to that. So don't let someone say to you, oh no, you're not there yet, or it's not necessary. Like, if you want those answers, you want those answers, and find a practitioner that's willing to go there with you. So what is reproductive immunology? It is a facet of like a fertility clinic, essentially, but they don't necessarily do the procedures. They're very hyper focused on just the immune system. So often they're working side by side with reproductive endocrinologists, which are the ones that are typically who you're usually maybe seeing the nurses in the fertility clinic, but they're the doctor overseeing the care in the fertility clinic. Whereas RIs are really just focused on the immunology part of things, and are usually working, with a clinic to give you the treatment on top of whatever else the clinic is doing. They'll also do the deeper dive look and understand it and have more experience with it as well than like our standard medical system, which is great. They're few and far between, though. They're not a super popular bunch yet. I do think the research will come out that will hopefully bring more RIs into the field, and make them more accessible. But for now, unfortunately, the immunology side of things in fertility care specifically is still very misunderstood, not well researched, often brushed off in the fertility clinic. But it's something that in Fertility Confidence Method, we feel very, very strongly about, both supporting in any way that we can with the tools that we have at our disposal, and we build that into our plans that we make for our clients, and helping you advocate to find someone that takes this part of fertility as seriously as you and I are taking it. So I do think in my lifetime, we will see more RI integration into clinics, or at least that is my hope for the world, for the fertility community, because it is so needed. I could spend the entire time telling you stories of how immune support has helped so many of my clients I can't even count. Women who've had loss after loss after loss, women who've had no answers, women who've been trying for multiple years and have had no success, and then have, walked this journey and been like, wow, here's the answer, here's the reason, and here's the treatment, and it works. And that's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. So for a lot of people, I think, especially if you're in the unexplained camp, this is something that we always keep top of mind when we're working with a couple inside Fertility Confidence Method, of like, sure, let's finish up getting all the other like easy, quote unquote, easy labs done, make sure we're not finding anything. But this is next. This and the microbiome are our next steps, because we want to get you answers. You come to work with us because you are someone who wants answers and then research back solutions. If that is you, welcome. Welcome to our community, right? And this is a big one that we've been talking a lot about inside our community. So that's reproductive immunology. definitely more we can say on that one, and maybe we'll have future episodes. I'd love to have an RI actually come on the podcast and like really give us all the info. I think that would be so cool. The third question, how to increase AMH levels naturally. I had to answer this one because there's so much controversy, I feel, with AMH. And one of the very first YouTube videos I put out, gosh, probably 3 years ago now, maybe even 4, was around how AMH doesn't really matter in like the broad sense of fertility. And it's still the number one tool a lot of clinics are actually using to make fertility decisions. And it's just not based on research anymore. We used to think that, AMH, if it is low, that means you don't have a lot of eggs left and therefore like won't. You're either not going to get pregnant or you should do IVF right now. And that's sort of how clinics are still driving women into the IVF bucket of like, well, you're 34, your AMH is low, you don't have a lot of time left, like tick, tick, tick. We should probably do this sooner rather than later. And for some women, the jump into IVF quicker is actually probably not a bad idea, in all honesty. But to make that decision solely on AMH and not look at anything else, not talk about diet, not talk about lifestyle, not talk about supplementation, not talk about male fertility, just it's a little low, so we're just going to now, go the IVF route. That's what I'm not okay with, because there actually is ways to increase your AMH. And I want to actually, ways to increase your AMH is not the right way to say it, because there's not like a supplement that increases your AMH. My philosophy is like the entire package of what we do, of lowering inflammation, of improving mitochondrial health, of improving your egg quality through the mitochondrial health piece, of cleaning up your diet, your lifestyle, getting you better sleep, managing your nervous system, and lowering your stress and cortisol. All of those things come together in a package that helps your body recruit more follicles and have more available for stimulation and allow them to be stimmed better. That's where the increase of AMH comes from, because anti-Müllerian hormone, which is what AMH stands for, is created by the small, they call them primordial follicles, so the little tiny follicles that are hanging out in your ovaries. So naturally, they assumed the more AMH you have, the more primordial follicles you have, right? It makes sense. But what we actually see in the literature is that AMH is not a predictor of clinical pregnancy outcome, meaning women with high AMH might not get pregnant and women with low AMH might get pregnant with no problem. What AMH can help to guide with is how your body's going to respond to IVF. If it is low, you might likely fall more into that like poor responder, low ovarian reserve camp. Like they need to treat you differently doing IVF. Cookie cutter IVF protocol, retrieval protocol, probably not going to work for you. And so we can use it to help guide treatment, but we're not using it to make clinical decisions outside of IVF, basically. So if you've been told your AMH is low and it's all doom and gloom and you need to move fast and time is ticking, I want you first and foremost to take a deep breath, think about how that narrative is actually working against you in your nervous system and your beliefs and your mindset. If you're walking around all day thinking, okay, another 24 hours has passed, I've probably lost 5 more eggs, like if it doesn't happen today, it's never going to happen for me. And then we talk about like, we need to lower our stress for fertility. How friggin' stressful is that narrative in your head, right? You've got enough stuff floating around in here. I want you to release this. This is where some just positive affirmations can really help if you have this belief of just, reminding yourself every day, morning and night, like my body is capable of making a baby. I have the ability and capacity to get pregnant and carry a pregnancy to term. And we're just, reminding ourselves, reminding our nervous system that like, we got this, right? We want to take that narrative of this isn't going to happen for me and flip it. And this is a really hard thing that I have with clinics and other practitioners, where we use this doom and gloom narrative with AMH. And when it comes to nervous system regulation, and the mental emotional piece and the energetic piece of getting pregnant, this conversation is really negating and not contributing positively to the energetic side and the nervous system piece, because it's just solidifying our negative and false beliefs of, I have no time left. This isn't going to work for me. It's a very low chance, when there's so much we can do, especially if you're just kind of getting this information and haven't really done a whole lot. There's so much we can do. And we have seen AMH increase time and time again. Even though clinics will tell you AMH doesn't increase, it can. I see it every single month. We had a client just a couple weeks ago, I think, before I went on my trip. She came and she's like, hey, I redid my AMH. It's been 6 months. I joined FCM. Look at this. And it went up like 3 points, like almost double. And I was like, wow. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh man, wow, that's really cool. Like, awesome job. And she's like, I'm like so happy. The doctor told me that this, is never happens, but like, here we are. She said her doctor so much actually said that it was probably an error previously. Like, did not believe so much so that she just assumed there was an error made prior, and that it should have been higher when they checked 6 months ago, whatever, it doesn't matter. What matters is we've seen it change, and we also don't necessarily need it to change. We need you to have lots of follicles, ideally. So if you had a low AMH and you haven't had an antral follicle count done via ultrasound, ideally between cycle day 5 and 10, to see how many follicles do you have in that like stim mode of your body, in your follicular phase, when your body is trying to stim follicles to get a dominant follicle. How many follicles are there? If that number is like 12 plus between both ovaries, you've actually got a decent amount of follicles there to work with. We're not in a huge rush. And we've seen lots of low AMHs come back with like 12, 15, 18 antral follicle count numbers. And like, we're okay with this. We're fine. We don't want to go down that narrative of we have to hurry. If it's lower than 10, we're going to have a conversation around like, it's not hurry, but maybe we should be making quicker decisions based on where you are at, what your timeline looks like, how many children you would ideally like, what your beliefs are, what are you actually open to from a medication perspective. Not everyone is open to IVF, and that's fine. So what are we open to? What does our possibility net kind of look like? And then how are we going to navigate that? But we do that based on your numbers, not just your AMH, not just your age, but the entire picture we're going to make those clinical decisions from. Okay. And then lastly, a question on any info on natural cycle IVF. And I wanted to touch on this because I don't think it's talked about all that much in the fertility community space. A lot of clinics, honest to goodness, still like to just do the traditional IVF model, which makes sense. They have the most experience with it. It helps to control the environment and the timing. Like, I get it. It makes total sense. But there are some women out there who are amazing candidates for a more, they call it natural protocol. If you know me, you know I don't love using that word. I think all pregnancies are natural regardless of how you got there. So we usually say medicated and unmedicated. So a lighter medication IVF, some women are really great candidates for that. Specifically, couples who are dealing with solely male factor would be a great candidate for a lower med protocol with IVF. When we're talking about natural IVF cycles, we're more so leaning into the idea of transfers. I have had some women go through a very light medication protocol for egg retrieval. I'm talking like just Clomid or Letrozole to take 1 or 2 eggs, and that's it. A lot of clinics don't like doing that because IVF is a numbers game. They would like to obviously have more. There's various reasons why these decisions are being made. Sometimes it's religious. Sometimes it's because they've actually responded poorly to like Gonal F and Menopur and the higher stim methods in the past, what have you. But when it comes to transfer, we actually have choices here. So some clinics still do a light stim protocol, trigger ovulation, progesterone, the whole thing. And other clinics will be more open to following your natural cycle rhythm if you have a regular cycle and it's predictable. So that if you are someone with a regular cycle and we are not necessarily concerned about your body ovulating, then this would be a really great option for you. The other person that a lower med transfer protocol is a good option for is if you've had lining issues in the past, because sometimes stim meds can worsen your lining or thin your lining. And so going with your body's natural rhythm and hormones can sometimes help with that. I still usually advocate for progesterone post transfer, even if you're trying to go like as unmedicated as possible, just because the research is there. And we want to just make sure like we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. You're getting a lot of even just extra progesterone to make sure that we're flooding those receptors, and we're helping your body acknowledge the pregnancy, take it, embed, all those things. So I usually still advocate for that. And I've had some women do like an unmedicated transfer, but then add in some immune support. So there's different ways we can do this. And I think just sitting down and talking to your practitioner around what your thoughts, fears, concerns, and wishes are, and then what they're open to, and coming up together with the best option for your body and making decisions based on how your body's responded to treatment in the past, what your personal levels and diagnoses obviously are, and following best practices and best available research that we have. And so this is not a new concept, but definitely not super common. Likely not something being brought up, but something that you might have to advocate for and just say like, am I a good candidate for this based on X, Y, Z? My cycle is regular. My linings always look good. I've ovulated on time. Like, would we be able to do this just with a little less stuff on my body? And some women just feel better with that. And that's okay too. So bringing this up to your RE is going to be the first step for sure, and making sure that you're a good candidate for it. There is some literature out there that shows it can be equally as effective as a full stim transfer. So like for most people, it is probably a fine option. And for some, it's not. Some we do need to control your cycle or give you extra estrogen or things to just help make sure your body is actually primed and ready for implantation. And that's okay too. The journey is different for everybody. I think the trickiest part with IVF is there's so many different combinations of meds and strategies that it's hard to keep up, especially for someone like me that's not, actually in that world, but I'm almost kind of like orbiting around it. And so trying to keep up with the new things, the new techniques, the different names for the same friggin' drug, which is so complicated and annoying. And like, clinics saying absolutely no, that's not okay, or that has no research, and other clinics like only doing it that way. It's really challenging to navigate. So if you are feeling very lost and confused in the IVF space, this is something we support clients with inside FCM, because it can be really challenging. Something that we're actually doing this month, specifically it's August in FCM, is we're trialing out small connection groups in our community. Our community is fantastic. And I'm always looking for ways of like getting them together more. It's really, really fun for me to see friendships forming in our community. And this was something that when I started Fertility Confidence Method was really important to me, the community aspect and women finding other women who were going through what they were going through, perhaps outside of their local community because they didn't have anyone to kind of lean on or talk to or who understood what was going on. Because I was working in a clinic and I would have a woman leave my chair and cross paths with my next patient. And I'd sit there and be like, oh my gosh, they're both going through a miscarriage right now and they both have no one to talk to other than their husbands, or they have no one that really understands like how this feels. And if I could just get them in the same room and be like, you guys need to discuss, but I couldn't, right? Because, patient confidentiality and all that jazz. So when I built FCM in the online space, I said, I'm doing this only if I can build this beautiful community with it, because the fertility journey is a challenging one. And it is incredibly lonely for a lot of women. And so we have this beautiful community. I was just away for a week. They're so awesome. Like answering each other's questions, and someone's like, I need a new deodorant, and there's like 30 responses of things to try. And we know, because we're monitoring and we're, attracting the right people, that any recommendations that are being given are recommendations we would give ourselves. It's not like the Wild Wild West Reddit thread where you're like hearing you should drink cucumber water and you'll get pregnant, because that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We're getting actual research backed advice from clients that have been with me and are still lurking behind the scenes to sort of help their fellow warriors, which is really, really awesome. So inside the community, we're trialing out having like a small connection community specifically for women going through IVF this month, because we found that for a lot of women, they were like, yeah, I have my friends and they're great, but like no one's gone through IVF. No one really gets like my fears or my worries or my concerns. And surprisingly, we actually have quite a few IVF clients from this summer specifically. We've had a lot of IVF pregnancies in June, which was really exciting. We had like a big transfer month in June. And so we have it's like retrieval month in August, which is really fun. So I was like, let's put them all in a room and let's give them the space to find someone that is like going through this process at the same time. Like, how valuable is that? And that's the beauty of community. And we've had so many women in our community actually reach out and be like, I love this idea. This is fantastic. So we're hoping to trial this out and then try other little pockets of like, okay, you guys are all going through IUI. Enjoy each other. Or you guys are actually just starting out, like enjoy each other, and kind of make these little community zones inside our broader community so that you can connect deeper with women who are in the same space as you, which is really, really fun. So if that's something you're interested in, come and check us out. You can book a free clarity call. We'll get to know you better, make sure FCM is a good fit for you, answer any and all of your questions. We have various different ways you can come in and work with us depending on what you currently need and are looking for from a support aspect. And you can do that over at downloads.kelseyduncan.com/results. We have calls open for next week. We're all full for this weekend, but we have some calls open next week. So you can pop that in. Actually, I guess when this goes out, it'll be Tuesday. So fingers crossed, there's still calls for you guys open next week. But so you can hop in, not just to our IVF channel, but to our community in general, get the support that you're looking for, get that personalization plan. We build out a step-by-step personalization plan for every single one of our clients. And get you pregnant before 2026. That would be the goal, right? That would be my goal at least. So thank you for listening. As always, I appreciate your likes, subscribes, your reviews. All of those things actually really do help the podcast get found by other couples who are also going through the fertility journey just like you. So the more you share, the more obviously the podcast platform shares. So I appreciate you all for being here, and I will see you guys in the next episode.